Ember Reeves clutched her worn leather satchel tighter as she stepped off the transport shuttle onto the gleaming platform of Celestial Academy. The crystalline spires of Nexus Prime stretched endlessly into the violet sky, their surfaces catching the light of 3 different suns and casting rainbow patterns across the walkways. Students of dozens of species moved in graceful streams toward the Academy's main entrance, their conversations creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, harmonics, and languages she couldn't begin to identify. She was the only human in sight. Taking a deep breath of the sweet, oxygen-rich air, Ember forced herself to smile. This was her dream, the first human accepted into the galaxy's most prestigious institution for interspecies learning. She'd worked her entire life for this moment, studying xenobiology and galactic linguistics until her eyes burned. The acceptance letter had been a miracle, a chance to prove that humans belonged among the star's greatest minds. So why did she feel so terribly alone? "Excuse me, are you blocking the path?" The voice was melodic but cold, like wind chimes in a winter storm. Ember turned to see a tall, elegant being with flowing silver hair that seemed to move independently of any breeze. Her skin had a translucent quality, and her eyes were pools of liquid starlight. She wore the Academy's standard uniform, a flowing robe that adapted to each wearer's physiology, but somehow made it look like haute couture. "Oh, sorry, I was just—" Ember began, stepping aside. "Taking in the sights?" "Yes, primitive species often do that." The being's smile was sharp as crystal. "You must be the human. I'm Crystal Moonbeam from the ethereal realms. Everyone's been talking about you." Ember's heart sank. She'd hoped to make a better first impression. "Nice to meet you." "I'm Ember, from the Death World," Crystal finished, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried farther than a shout. "How fascinating. I wonder if you'll last the semester." Before Ember could respond, Crystal glided away, leaving behind only the faint scent of ozone and crushed dreams. The next few hours blurred together in a haze of registration, dormitory assignments, and orientation presentations. Ember tried to introduce herself to other students, but conversations died the moment she mentioned Earth. A group of aquatic Thalassians actually backed away when she approached, their gill slits fluttering in what she assumed was fear. Even the massive, rock-like geological golems gave her a wide berth, which seemed impossible given their generally friendly reputation. By dinner time, Ember sat alone in the vast cafeteria, picking at a bowl of something that tasted like cinnamon but looked like purple soup. The food was delicious, but it might as well have been cardboard for all the joy it brought her. Around her, students laughed and chatted in their various languages, creating bonds that would last lifetimes. And there she sat, the dangerous human from the infamous Death World, eating alone. "Mind if I join you?" Ember looked up, ready to politely decline. She'd had enough pity for one day, but found herself staring into the most extraordinary eyes she'd ever seen. They were golden, with flecks of amber that seemed to catch and hold light like tiny suns. The being attached to those eyes was tall and lean, with iridescent feathers that shifted from deep blue to silver to gold, depending on the angle of the light. 2 graceful wings folded against his back, and his face, while clearly avian in structure, held an intelligence and warmth that made Ember's heart skip. Sure," she managed, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. He settled gracefully, his feathers rustling with a sound like silk in wind. "I'm Zephyr Cloudweaver, from the Aryan Sky Cities of Ventus. And before you ask, yes, I know exactly where you're from." Ember tensed, waiting for the inevitable retreat. Instead, Zephyr leaned forward, his golden eyes bright with curiosity. "I've been dying to meet someone from Earth. Your planet sounds absolutely incredible." "Incredible?" Ember blinked. "Most people here seem to think it's a nightmare hellscape." Zephyr laughed, a sound like silver bells caught in a breeze. Most people here have never left their homeworlds except to come to school. They think anything different from their experience must be terrifying. He tilted his head, studying her with obvious fascination. But I've read every piece of literature about Earth I could find. A world with such diversity, such resilience, ... It must be beautiful. For the first time since arriving, Ember felt her genuine smile return. It really is. We have these incredible ecosystems, forests and deserts and oceans. The variety of life is amazing. Tell me about the oceans, Zephyr said, his feathers shifting to deeper blues. I've read they cover most of your world. About 70%, Ember confirmed, warming to her favorite subject. And they're full of life. Coral reefs that are like underwater gardens. Whales that sing to each other across thousands of miles. Schools of fish that move like living clouds, ... double quotes. She trailed off, noticing how intently Zephyr was listening. His head was tilted slightly, his golden eyes fixed on her face with an attention that was both flattering and slightly overwhelming. Sorry, she said, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. I tend to ramble about this stuff. Most people find it boring. Boring? Zephyr's feathers ruffled in what she suspected was surprise. Are you joking? You're describing an entire world I've only dreamed about. Please, keep going. And so she did. For the next 2 hours, Ember found herself telling Zephyr about everything from mountain ranges to meadows, from the northern lights to tropical storms. He asked thoughtful questions, laughed at her stories about her pet dog, though he seemed confused by the concept of keeping predators as companions, and shared tales of his own world cities built on floating platforms among the clouds, storms that lasted for years, and aerial dances that could take days to complete. Your world sounds pretty incredible too, Ember said, as they finally prepared to leave the now empty cafeteria. I'd love to see those cloud cities someday. And I'd love to see your forests and oceans, Zephyr replied. Then, with a small smile that made her heart flutter, he added, maybe we could arrange a cultural exchange. As they walked toward the dormitory towers, Ember felt lighter than she had since arriving. Maybe this wouldn't be such a lonely semester after all. Maybe, just maybe, she'd found someone who saw Earth not as a death world to be feared, but as a wonder to be explored. Same time tomorrow? Zephyr asked as they reached the point where their paths diverged, his dormitory in the atmospheric tower, hers in the terrestrial wing. I'd like that, Ember said, surprised by how much she meant it. She watched him walk away, his feathers catching the light from the corridor's bioluminescent strips, and felt something she hadn't expected to find among the stars. Hope. And maybe, if she was being honest with herself, something that felt remarkably like the beginning of a crush on the most beautiful being she'd ever met. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. Zephyr Cloudweaver had always prided himself on being rational. Aryans were known throughout the galaxy for their logical minds and careful, decision-making traits that had allowed their species to build cities in the clouds and master the art of atmospheric flight. So why, he wondered as he preened his feathers in the mirror, was he spending so much time thinking about a human from a death world? 3 weeks had passed since that first dinner, and he'd shared a meal with Ember every single day. Their conversations had become the highlight of his academic experience, filling his thoughts during lectures on quantum mechanics and interdimensional physics. She had a way of describing her world that made even the most mundane details sound like poetry, the way morning dew collected on spider webs, how snow fell in intricate crystalline patterns, the sound of rain against windows. His roommate, Jasper Stormwind, emerged from the sonic shower with his dark gray feathers still dripping. You're preening again, he observed, settling on his perch with practiced grace. That's the 3rd time this morning. I'm maintaining proper hygiene, Zephyr replied, though he caught himself smoothing down the same section of wing feathers for the 4th time. Jasper's amber eyes narrowed with concern. This is about that human, isn't it? Zephyr. Everyone's talking. They say she's from Earth, that nightmare world where everything wants to kill you. That's ridiculous propaganda. Zephyr snapped, his feathers ruffling with irritation. Ember's told me about Earth. It's a beautiful world with incredible biodiversity. Biodiversity that includes apex predators in every ecosystem. Jasper spread his wings wide in exasperation. My cousin took a xenobiology course last semester. The professor showed footage from Earth creatures with serrated teeth that can bite through metal, venomous arthropods that can kill with a single sting, massive predatory fish that hunt in packs. Zephyr turned away from the mirror to face his friend. And we live on a world where storms can tear apart entire cities, and the wind pressure alone can crush most alien visitors. Every world has its dangers, but we evolved here. We're adapted to it. Jasper's voice grew gentle, concerned. Zephyr, I know you're fascinated by other cultures, but this human, she's dangerous. Her entire species had to become predators just to survive on their world. You don't know her, Zephyr said quietly, but he felt a small seed of doubt take root in his chest. An hour later, Zephyr found himself in Professor Sage Nebula's Comparative Cultural Studies classroom, trying to focus on a lecture about interspecies communication patterns. But his attention kept drifting to Ember, who sat 2 rows ahead of him, taking notes with the focused intensity that had first caught his attention. Professor Nebula was an ethereal and ancient being of pure energy contained within a shimmering humanoid form. Their voice resonated directly in students' minds, rather than through sound, creating an oddly intimate learning experience. Today, we'll be assigning cultural exchange projects, Professor Nebula announced, their form flickering between silver and gold. You'll work in pairs, each partner from a different species, to create a comprehensive presentation about your respective homeworlds. This will account for 40% of your final grade. Zephyr's heart leaped. This was a legitimate excuse to spend even more time with Ember. Partnerships will be randomly assigned, the professor continued, crushing Zephyr's hopes. When I call your names, please move to sit with your partner. The list began, and Zephyr watched with growing disappointment as other students paired off. Then, like a miracle, he heard, Zephyr Cloudweaver and Ember Reeves. Their eyes met across the classroom, and Ember's face lit up with a smile that made Zephyr's chest feel warm and tight. He moved to sit beside her, acutely aware of how his feathers seemed to shimmer more brightly in her presence. This is going to be amazing, Ember whispered as Professor Nebula continued with the assignments. I can't wait to learn more about Ventus. And I'm eager to hear more about Earth, Zephyr replied, though Jasper's words echoed uncomfortably in his mind. After class, they walked together toward the library, planning their project approach. The afternoon suns cast everything in golden light, and Ember's hair seemed to catch fire in the rays. Zephyr found himself watching the way she moved. There was something predatory about her grace, he realized, something fluid and purposeful that spoke of a species that had earned its place at the top of its world's food chain. A thought should have been frightening. Instead, it was oddly attractive. So, Ember said as they settled into a quiet corner of the library, surrounded by floating holographic displays and crystalline data nodes, should we start with geography? Climate patterns? What about the life forms? Zephyr suggested, pulling up a holographic interface. You mentioned yesterday that Earth has millions of different species. Ember's eyes lit up another thing he'd come to love about her, the way she became radiant when discussing her passions. Oh, where do I even start? We have everything from microscopic organisms to massive whales that are longer than some of your sky cities. Began pulling up images and videos from Earth's databases, her fingers dancing over the interface with practiced ease. Look at this. It's called a butterfly. They start as caterpillars, completely transform their bodies, and emerge as these beautiful flying creatures. The holographic butterfly that appeared between them was indeed stunning, its wings painted in brilliant oranges and blacks. But as Zephyr watched the footage, he noticed something that made his feathers prickle with unease. It's eating that other creature," he said quietly. Oh, that's just a caterpillar eating a leaf," Ember said dismissively. "They're herbivores at that stage. Though some caterpillars are carnivorous, there are ones that eat aphids, and some that even practice cannibalism when food is scarce." The casual way she mentioned cannibalism sent a chill through Zephyr's hollow bones. Cannibalism? It's pretty common on Earth, actually. Lots of species do it. Ember continued scrolling through images, seemingly oblivious to his growing discomfort. "Oh, here's one of my favorites, praying mantises. The females often eat the males during mating. And these are black widow spiders, same deal. Plus, they're venomous enough to kill creatures much larger than themselves." Each new creature seemed more terrifying than the last. Zephyr watched in fascinated horror as she showed him sharks with rows of razor teeth, snakes that could swallow prey larger than themselves, and something called a honey badger that appeared to attack everything in sight with suicidal fury. "And this," Ember said, her voice full of fondness, "is a picture of me with my family's pet dog when I was little." Zephyr stared at the image of a young Ember with her arms around a large, furry creature with prominent fangs and powerful jaws. The creature's tongue was hanging out, and its eyes looked friendly enough, but those teeth. "That's a pet," he managed. "Best friend I ever had," Ember said softly. "Ranger was so protective of me. He once chased off a bear that wandered into our yard." "A bear?" Zephyr's voice cracked slightly. "Oh, they're not that dangerous if you know what you're doing. Much more scared of humans than we are of them usually. Now, cougars are a different story. They're ambush predators that can leap 40 feet and bite through spines. Had one stalk me during a camping trip once. Beautiful creature, though. The room felt like it was spinning. Every creature Ember described with such love and casual familiarity sounded like something from a nightmare. And yet, watching her face as she spoke, seeing the genuine affection in her eyes when she talked about her pet, predator, and the way she'd encountered apex hunters with nothing but admiration. "Zephyr?" Ember's voice was full of concern. "You look pale. Well, paler than usual. Are you feeling all right?" He realized he'd been gripping the edge of the table hard enough to leave marks with his talons. "I'm fine," he lied. "It's just ... Your world is very different from mine." "I know it probably seems scary," Ember said, reaching out to touch his hand. Her skin was warm, and her touch sent electricity racing up his arm. "But it's really not that bad once you understand the ecosystem. Humans aren't apex predators because we're the strongest or fastest. We're successful because we're adaptable and we work together." Her hand was still on his, and despite everything Jasper had said, despite the mounting evidence that Earth was indeed the nightmare world of galactic legend, Zephyr found himself turning his hand over to intertwine their fingers. "Maybe," he said quietly, "you could tell me more about it. About how humans ... adapted." Her smile was brilliant, and for a moment, Zephyr forgot about fanged pets and casual cannibalism in creatures that ate their mates. All he could see was the way her eyes sparkled with intelligence and passion, the way her enthusiasm made her beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with physical appearance. He was falling for her, he realized, falling hard and fast for a predator from a death world, and every rational thought in his head was screaming that this was dangerous. But as she began to speak, her voice painting pictures of humanity's journey from prey to predator, of cooperation and innovation, and the fierce love that humans felt for their hostile world, Zephyr found that he didn't care about the danger. Some things, he thought as he lost himself in her words, were worth the risk. Professor Sage Nebula had existed for over 3 millennia. witnessing the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth of new species, and the evolution of consciousness itself across the galaxy. In all that time, they had learned that the most beautiful moments often emerged from the most unexpected places, like watching a young, erring and a human discover love, despite everything the universe seemed to be telling them about why it was impossible. From their position at the front of the comparative xenobiology classroom, Sage observed the subtle dance between Ember and Zephyr. The way Zephyr's feathers unconsciously shifted to mirror Ember's emotional states. How Ember's attention remained focused on Zephyr, even when other students spoke. The careful distance they maintained in public, and the electric tension that crackled between them whenever their hands accidentally brushed. Young love was always fascinating, but interspecies romance carried complexities that could either strengthen or destroy those involved. And given the whispers Sage had been hearing around campus about the dangerous human and her foolish, erring admirer, intervention might be necessary soon. Today, Sage announced, their ethereal form shimmering with gentle authority, we'll be presenting our cultural exchange projects. I expect thoughtful analysis, respectful questions, and open minds. A ripple of nervous energy passed through the classroom. Nova Brightstar, Ember's crystalline roommate from the Prism Worlds, shot an encouraging smile toward her friend. Echo Void Whisper, a shadowy entity from the dark nebula, remained as unreadable as always, their form shifting like smoke. First presentation, Zephyr and Ember. Sage noted how the pair exchanged a quick, intimate glance, the kind that spoke of late-night planning sessions and shared secrets. Over the past month, their project had clearly become secondary to their growing relationship, though neither seemed fully aware of it yet. Zephyr stood first, his magnificent feathers catching the classroom's bioluminescent lighting. My partner and I have explored the fascinating parallels between our worlds, he began, his melodic voice carrying only the slightest tremor. Despite surface differences, both Ventus and Earth have produced remarkably adaptive species. The presentation began beautifully. Zephyr described Ventus with poetic grace-floating cities that danced with wind currents, aerial courtship displays that could last for days, storms that reshaped entire continents. His passion for his homeworld was evident, but Sage noticed something else, the way he kept glancing at Ember, as if seeking her approval. That it was Ember's turn. Earth, she began, her voice warm with affection, is a world of incredible diversity and resilience. Life has found ways to thrive in every conceivable environment. She started safely describing Earth's varied climates and geographical features. But as she warmed to her subject, Ember began showcasing Earth's wildlife with the enthusiasm that had clearly captivated Zephyr. This is the African savanna, she said as a holographic landscape materialized above the classroom. Golden grasslands stretched endlessly, dotted with acacia trees and watering holes, home to some of Earth's most magnificent creatures. A herd of elephants appeared, magnificent and peaceful. Several students murmured appreciation for their size and obvious intelligence. And here are lions, Ember continued, her voice full of admiration. The peaceful scene suddenly erupted into chaos as a pride of lions brought down a zebra in a explosion of dust and predatory grace. The kill was swift but violent, and several students gasped in shock. Coral Deep Current, the aquatic thalassian, actually recoiled so far her chair scraped against the floor. Fascinating hunting strategy, Ember continued, seemingly oblivious to the room's horror. Lions are one of the few cats that hunt cooperatively. The females do most of the hunting, while males defend territory. Very efficient social structure. Rocky Ironbark, the massive geological student, rumbled uneasily. They kill for food? Regularly? Of course, Ember replied, looking puzzled. They're obligate carnivores. Though humans are omnivores, we can eat both plants and meat. Speaking of which, here's how early humans hunted. The hologram shifted to show persistence hunting humans chasing prey across vast distances, using endurance and intelligence rather than speed or strength. To Ember, it was a testament to human ingenuity. To the alien students, it looked like something from their darkest nightmares. Relentless predators that never stopped pursuing their prey. "Your species hunts?" whispered Crystal Moonbeam, her ethereal form flickering with distress. "We're persistence hunters," Ember explained proudly. "We can run longer distances than almost any other species on Earth. We literally chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion." "Isn't evolution incredible?" The classroom had gone dead silent. Even Echo Void Whisper's shadowy form seemed more solid, as if horror had given them physical weight. But Sage noticed something the students missed: Zephyr's reaction. While others recoiled in fear, his golden eyes remained fixed on Ember with something that looked remarkably like awe. His feathers had shifted to deeper golds and blues colors that, in Aryan culture, indicated fascination rather than fear. "And this," Ember continued, "shows human endurance capabilities." She showed footage of humans running ultramarathons, swimming across vast oceans, climbing impossible mountain faces. What she saw as triumph over adversity, the aliens saw as evidence of a species so terrifyingly determined that they would literally run themselves to near death to achieve their goals. "We also form incredibly strong social bonds," Ember added, switching to images of human families and communities. "Humans will fight to the death to protect their loved ones, travel impossible distances to help each other, and spend their entire lives caring for family members who can't care for themselves." She meant it as evidence of humanity's compassion. The aliens heard it as confirmation that humans were pack hunters who never abandoned their own, making them even more dangerous as a group. "Questions?" Ember asked brightly. The silence stretched until Nova Brightstar, bless her crystalline heart, raised a tentative hand. Do humans keep any non-dangerous animals as companions?" "Oh, absolutely." Ember's face lit up. "We domesticated wolves into dogs, wildcats into house cats. We keep birds, reptiles, fish, all sorts of wonderful creatures. You domesticated wolves?" Rocky's geological voice was barely a whisper. 30,000 years ago, Ember confirmed. "It was one of our greatest achievements. We turned apex predators into our best friends." Professor Sage watched Zephyr during this exchange and saw the exact moment the young Airing made a decision. His feathers shifted to their most brilliant configuration, and he stood slowly, his golden eyes never leaving Ember's face. "I have a question," Zephyr said, his voice carrying across the shocked classroom. "Ember, when you describe Earth's predators, your voice changes. You sound fond of them." Ember blinked, considering the question seriously. "I suppose I am. They're beautiful creatures, perfectly adapted to their environments. Deadly, yes, but only because they have to be to survive. There's something magnificent about a creature that's so perfectly designed for its purpose, even though they're dangerous." "Especially because they're dangerous," Emma replied softly, and Sage saw something pass between the two young beings that transcended species barriers. Danger and beauty often go together. The most spectacular things in nature are usually the most dangerous storms, volcanoes, the deep ocean, predators in the wild. That doesn't make them evil. It makes them honest. Zephyr stepped closer to her, ignoring the shocked whispers from other students. "And humans? You're dangerous too, aren't you?" Ember's cheeks flushed a biological response that fascinated several xenobiology students despite their fear. "We can be. When we need to protect something we love." "Good," Zephyr said simply, and before the entire class, he reached out and took her hand. "I wouldn't want you to be anything less than exactly what you are." The classroom erupted. Students called out in alarm. Chairs scraped as several beings backed away, and Crystal Moonbeam actually fled the room entirely. But Sage Nebula watched with satisfaction as Ember and Zephyr stood together, fingers intertwined, facing the chaos with calm determination. "Enough," Sage commanded, their ethereal voice resonating directly in every mind present. Immediate silence fell. Class dismissed. "Ember, Zephyr, please remain." As the other students fled, Sage approached the young couple with something approximating a smile on their energy-composed features. "That was quite a declaration," they observed gently. Zephyr's feathers ruffled slightly, but his grip on Ember's hand didn't waver. "Professor, I know what everyone thinks." "What everyone thinks," Sage interrupted, "is irrelevant. What matters is what you two think and feel." Ember looked up at Zephyr with wonder in her eyes. "You're not afraid of me?" "Terrified," Zephyr admitted with a laugh that sounded like wind chimes. "You're from a world where everything wants to kill you. You casually describe persistence hunting like it's poetry, and you think apex predators make good pets. You're the most dangerous creature I've ever met." Ember's face fell, but Zephyr continued before she could speak. "You're also the most beautiful, most passionate, most incredible being I've ever encountered. You talk about your deadly world with such love, such wonder. You see beauty in things others fear. You ... double quotes." He paused, his feathers shifting to the soft silvers that indicated vulnerability in airing culture. "You make me want to be brave enough to see the universe through your eyes." Tears gathered in Ember's eyes, another fascinating biological response that Sage filed away for later study. "Zephyr, I love you," he said simply. "Dangerous world, predatory ancestry, and all. In fact, especially because of all that, you're not a monster, Ember. You're magnificent." Professor Sage Nebula, who had witnessed the birth of stars and the evolution of civilizations, felt something warm and bright bloom in their eternal consciousness as they watched a human and an Aryan discover that love truly could bridge any gap, even the one between prey species and predator. "Well," they said softly, "I believe this presentation deserves full marks. Excellent work on understanding your respective cultures and each other." As the young couple laughed through happy tears, Sage made a mental note to have some serious conversations with the other faculty about prejudice and the difference between dangerous and evil. After all, the most beautiful love stories often bloomed in the most unlikely places. And sometimes, they thought as they watched Ember and Zephyr walk from the classroom hand in hand, the most dangerous creatures made the most devoted partners. The universe, it seemed, still had surprises to offer, even to an immortal professor who thought they'd seen everything.